Graham? Okay. Folks, today we are dealing with, or we got a friend of mine who is more than deserving of being in the Canadian Boxing Hall of Fame, to say the least. This is one of the only, I can think of like less than 5 world champions that came out of Canada on the professional ranks. Not to mention he's a throwback from way back in that he was on that iconic team that went to the '88 Olympic Games. This is the modern day, as far as I'm concerned, Gabe Cotter from Welcome Back Cotter, the teacher extraordinaire, Mr. Manny Sobral.
Thank you, Ray. Well, that's a pretty good introduction, buddy. I mean, like for all intents and purposes, I did win a world title. I'm proud of that. But, like it wasn't like a WBC, but it was an IBO, and IBO is a pretty respected world title. Just
Precisely. No, man. Like, honestly, like think about it from a Canadian standpoint. No, you are boxing royalty. To actually bring a world strap back home, you represented us fantastic.
Being Canadian and being like, I mean, I went through ups and downs in boxing. I super exceeded, I think, any expectation that most people had of me. And I was just a chubby kid that walked into the gym one day when I was 12 years old, thinking I was going to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger or something and lift some weights. And the guy there, an old gentleman by the name of Steve Volanchek, says, no, you're not. You're not going to lift weights. You're going to box. And then he started doing hand pads with me. And it was kind of in the tough part of town, an area called, it's kind of the skids in Vancouver called, I don't know what they call it, but it's on Main and Hastings. And it's one of the worst places you'll ever see people shooting up heroin and doing crystal meth. Do you know that area in Vancouver?
I've heard of that area. I've never been there.
Thankfully. It's like you'd never believe you're in like a first world country, because there's people just all over the streets, and it's just nuts. And it's like a 6-block radius, 6 blocks by 6 blocks, and it's a different world. And what's happened is in Vancouver is they had a mental institute called Essendale in Riverview, and they basically slowly have started shutting it down. But the problem is the people that were living in these institutions, the government's not giving them enough money to go get themselves like a more affluent sort of place to stay. They're giving them, I don't know what they're giving. I think it's like $1,500. And what can you afford to pay rent and to pay food and to pay everything else? So they end up in the skids.
Yeah.
So all this mental illness brings the drug dealers. So the drug dealers got a clientele that's never going to go away, because there's more and more coming. Sweet. So it's almost like the government's almost set it up like that. And that's Vancouver. That's the only part of Vancouver. The rest of Vancouver is beautiful. Like, Vancouver is a beautiful place to live. Don't get me wrong, but I think there's got to be changes made to the downtown east side. That 6-block radius.
Wow.
That happened to be where I started boxing. It's called the Inner City Gym. The Inner City Gym was at Main and Hastings. It was called the Inner City Gym, the Western Sports Center. And back in the 80s, when I started in 1982, that area was not nearly what it is today, because there wasn't the mental illness stuff. It was more people that loggers and things that worked from out of town. They would stay in hotels around that area. Okay. And there's this gym that had like a 20-foot ceiling, and it had this big mural of Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier, and had a big mural of Rocky Marciano, and had another mural of Joe Walcott. And it was just iconic. It was just amazing. It was one of the best places. Like, I'd love to see a gym like that around now, and I never have since that time. And it was, like I said, it was called the Inner City Gym, and there was a heavyweight out of there at that time, out of Vancouver, by the name of Gordy Reset. Gordy Reset was managed by Sylvester Stallone, and he became one of the, like, a fringe top 10 contender. He didn't have the training ethic to get him anywhere. He was he was kind of like the next great white hope. That's what Stallone was trying to build back in the 80s, was like a real Rocky rather than a Rocky movie, you know? And
Okay.
this Gordy Rousset was part of it. You should Google him up. Gordy Rousset, he had probably 30 or 40 professional boxing matches. I think he got it thrown in with Tony Tubbs or one of the sort of top heavyweights, and he didn't do so well. He fought Trevor Berbick, went 10 or 11 rounds with Trevor Berbick.
Really?
The Canadian heavyweight title. He lost, unfortunately, but he stood up to Berbick, so he was a fighter. And I was lucky to have a guy like that to look up to. And there's also another fighter by the name of Jamie Olenberger, who was a top welterweight. He fought back then, the ESPN had these tournaments back in the 80s where you could be the ESPN champion. And I think there was restrictions. You couldn't have more than 20 fights type thing. And Jamie made it to the finals and fought a guy named Santana, and unfortunately lost the decision. But he was another guy I looked up to. And because he was close to my weight, Jamie and I sparred hundreds of rounds, and I was really fortunate to get that work. Because as you know, Ray, if you spar with someone that's better than you, it can only make you better.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. No, you're right. Those scenarios, those what you call it? Yeah, those scenarios where you have down and out, town, for whatever reason, breeds some hungry fighters.
I agree. Like in a lot of the movies, like Jake LaMotta, you look at Jake LaMotta, you look at, a lot of tough guys that come out of the hood, right? And
literally, it's
I would consider myself being brought up in a middle-class family with a mother and a father, and I had a sister. And we lived in just a regular Vancouver. It's called the Vancouver Special. It's a house that's like 2 levels, and it's got like two bedrooms downstairs, 3 bedrooms upstairs, and a kitchen downstairs and a kitchen upstairs. And they started building these things in the 70s, and that's what we lived in just a Vancouver Special, just a regular home, and in a 33-foot by 122-foot lot. That's the regular lot in Vancouver, so nothing special, just the run-of-the-mill. And back then, this is what's crazy about Vancouver, because in the 80s, my parents bought that house for like, I think $80,000 in 1981 or something. Well, now that home is worth probably 1.7, 1.8 million. It's crazy. Real estate is just nuts. I mean, I agree. 80 grand was probably a lot of money back in 1980, but
but
it wasn't 1.7 million.
No, it's nothing like today.
Yeah.
Oh, dear God.
Yeah. No, I hear Toronto real estate's pretty high too, right?
It's ridiculous. There's teardowns for $1 million.
I know, it's nuts.
It's absolutely
I don't know who can afford it. Got to move to Regina or somewhere like Halifax or something.
Halifax.
Yeah.
East Coast. No, the pricing, the housing pricing is gone. It looks like the objective is to get on par with New York, which is just an absurdity.
I know, it's absurd. But I heard Halifax still got good house prices.
Actually, very good.
Yeah. Montreal's getting up there too, I heard, but it's still not as much as Toronto or Vancouver.
Like Toronto. Well, Vancouver I think surpasses Toronto.
It's about the same. It goes back and forth every year, but I think it's around the same. Yeah.
Tell me, you went to that iconic Olympic Games. As far as I'm concerned, it's like the games, simply because of all the controversy. A certain part of me is happy that AIBA is out, simply because of what happened to me. The one time I was supposed to go, I had the opportunity to go to the Olympic trials, and they said that I was too old. So they've always had I have had a bad taste in my mouth when it comes to AIBA. But now, like, they've been exposed for the corruption, and whatnot. Nothing will surpass that of 2016. Hence why they're gone. But 2008 or 1988.
Yeah, that's a long time ago, man. 32 years, 33 years.
Yeah. But wow, what a mess.
Yeah, that was a mess, and that changed boxing because now they're back to the regular scoring 20-point system, but
Yeah.
that year, 1988, was the last year that they had judges scoring the bouts. Then they came to this computer scoring, which of course didn't work, and they figured that out for a while. They also changed boxing because it was 3 3-minute rounds in the 1988 Olympics. The 1992 Olympics, they went to 5 2-minute rounds.
Was
but
it?
Then did you ever box those 2-minute rounds?
I did. Okay, I started my boxing in '95. We were fighting 3 minutes, and like I incredibly ambitious. I attempted to qualify for the '96 Olympic Games.
Yeah.
Nowhere with that. But by the 2000 games, so '98 it was 5 2-minute rounds.
No, 98 it was. I thought it was 92. They changed it to 5 2-minute rounds. That Olympics.
I'd have to check.
Actually, either 5 2-minute rounds or 4 2-minute rounds.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't 92 Olympics, because I remember Chris Johnson's fight with Chris, and he lost
three threes. Okay.
Yeah.
So maybe it was the 90s. It was probably the '96 Olympics. They did 2-minute rounds.
It may have been then. And then 2000 by 2000 it was 4 2-minute rounds.
Yeah, 4. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they kept changing it around, but then see the problem that they didn't figure out is the ABC that was filming it. They couldn't cut in, like their timing was wrong, right? So then they reverted back to the 3-minute rounds. And I mean, they just overlooked a lot of things. AIBA, I mean, like you said, it was very corrupt. There was envelopes changing hands in Seoul, Korea. Apparently, there was envelopes changing hands, and then there was a Korean that lost to a Bulgarian. I think they were featherweights, and then all of a sudden, the lights in the whole arena go out, and security guards are taking their jackets off, jumping in the ring to beat up the referee that was from New Zealand. And then they had to fly that guy out the next day.
Oh, wow.
Crazy. It was crazy. And then Roy Jones gets ripped off in the finals against a South Korean who didn't touch Roy. Roy loses a 3-2 split decision, yet after that, they vote him the best boxer of the tournament. So how does that work?
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. He was voted the boxer of the tournament, yet
he took a silver.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
There's a lot of interesting things during Olympics, and I mean, it was an amazing thing. Like, I mean, I was 19 years old. I was on top of the world. I felt. I mean, walking into the stadium, there's like 90,000 people. You see, like Ali explains one day when he's fighting Henry Cooper, you see one row and you see the next row, and you think that people are following it. Like, it was crazy. Like, it was just nuts. Granted, like not everyone's eyes on you, but you feel so part of it. You know what I'm saying?
Very much so. Very much so.
And watching, like, we were on the track watching Ben Johnson race. I mean, it was a crazy Olympics. I mean, that was one of the, no one. Well, okay, the young people of today, you ask them who Ben Johnson is, they don't know. But if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, you know who Ben Johnson is.
You know who Ben, of course, and more importantly, if you're in your 40s and 50s and up, you remember where you were.
Yeah, that's right.
When it happened. But
and a lot of people remember the great Lennox Lewis, the Lion, taking the gold medal, knocking out Riddick Bowe. Yeah. But you look at those Olympics. I mean, look at the heavyweight, Lennox Lewis, the super heavyweight. The heavyweight was Ray Mercer. Ray Mercer became a hell of a great pro fighter, and he was a vicious man. And then the guy that beat Egerton Marcus for the gold, Henry Masque, became one of the best middleweights in the game. And there was Roy Jones Jr. who won he didn't win. He got the silver in the super welter, and then the welter was kind of the guy that won my division was weird. His name was Robert Wangila. He was from Kenya. He was knocking guys out. He had a real powerful punch. But what they did is they ripped off a guy from Germany, a guy named Siegfried Menhert. Menhert, his name was. And that guy was pretty amazing, but he got ripped off, I think, like Roy Jones. I forget who he lost to. I think it might have been a South Korean that he lost to, but he shouldn't have lost. I mean, he would have won that division, I think. But this way, what's that?
You'd have beaten the Kenyan?
The Menhert? I think he would have. But I mean, it's all depending, right? Because you got that punch, and the gloves were so fucking, excuse the language. The gloves were so small, and I don't know what kind of make they were, but they were just like a leather piece of. They're small, man. There's a lot of knockouts at that Olympics, but yeah, I think Menhart would have been able to get by him, in my opinion. I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, that's boxing for you, though, because I mean, there's I don't know if you remember Big John Tate
Yeah.
was winning who's he fighting in the 15th and final round? Mike Weaver. He was beating Mike Weaver, and Mike Weaver lands a right hander or a left hook in the last minute of the 15th round.
Yeah.
And hey, there's a new heavyweight champion.
Hey, he had a racer. Like so many heavyweights do.
Yeah, and but it was it's memories. And then I didn't box for a while after that. I decided to go to school instead, and took a little bit of time off in boxing. And then in 1991, like 3 years later, I still kind of went to the gym and messed around and stuff. But in 91, there was this thing called the BC Tough Man competition, and I went and watched it in Vancouver. It was at this place called the Agrodome, and then I was watching these guys. I said, "Man, I can beat these guys," because it was modified boxing rules that you weren't able to kick or nothing like that. You just punch, and BC. There was a Tough Man competition. I'm sure they had them around there as well.
Oh, yeah.
And like what the Butterbean sort of did, right?
Yeah.
So watch these guys. So then there's two more cities because there was 8 cities in BC that qualified, and then they were going to have those 8 people back for the finals, right? So they did the Vancouver one. I watched. I said, I can beat these guys. So I went to Nanaimo and I qualified for the finals, and then I won the finals. And that was in 91. And then I tried qualifying for the 92 Olympics. But because of they said, well, you made money and you're a professional. I said, yeah, but it wasn't in boxing.
Oh, wow.
Tough man.
Really?
So then they wouldn't let me box amateur. So I may have been able to make the 92 games. I don't know, because it was Greg Johnson that went for Canada that year. And
Greg go? No.
Greg Johnson?
I don't think Greg was on the team.
92 games?
Yeah, Chris Johnson was on that team.
Chris was, okay.
Yeah. I don't remember who was
Well, you know what happened? Maybe Greg didn't qualify to make it, but I think he was Canadian champion that year.
Maybe.
But I mean, he was a guy that was one of the guys that had to be in '88. I had to beat Greg too. Like I boxed Greg at the '88 game or the '88 trials and stuff.
Yeah.
And I beat him. That guy could punch, man.
Okay. See, Chris doesn't stop talking about how if I was around back in those days, Greg would have knocked me out even at welterweight. I'm like, why would Greg
punch like you wouldn't believe, man?
Yeah,
the problem with Greg is that you knew if you got past the second round, you'd had nothing left. So you just made him work for a couple rounds, and then the third round was always
yours.
If you're still around, yeah. If you're still around, but he knocked a lot of guys out, man.
Wow.
And Greg was good, man. I mean, and Chris was good. They're a good family. I mean, Kitchener, Ontario, they had a lot of great fighters because Arnie Boehm coached all those guys, right? And he's a great coach. And of course, he started Lennox Lewis too.
That's actually where I started.
With Arnie?
No, there was another gym called Grand River Boxing Club with Bill Longmire. So I started with Bill and the Vanderpools.
Yeah, the Vanderpools, Sid and Fitz.
Fitz was training out of Grand River when I started. So I started with Fitz.
Yeah, but didn't they end up going to Arnie as well?
No, they started with Arnie.
Oh, they started
with their dad, and then they went to Arnie.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because Arnie had a lot of Canadian champions, man. That guy.
Arnie was a great coach.
Yeah.
Arnie was great.
It must have been. And, in boxing, as you know, it takes coaching, but it takes so much. You got to have the athlete. You got to have a guy or a woman nowadays. Back in the 80s, they weren't women, but you got to have an athlete that can withstand a lot and can stay calm, cool, collected when everything's going awry sometimes. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's so many variables in boxing.
By all means. At the end of the day, I was just talking with Mark Ramsey yesterday, and we're talking about the attributes that a coach brings to the equation and the ability to excite the fighter if needed, or calm them down and just say, pace yourself.
Yeah.
You know, it's the game of boxing is incredibly cerebral. It's a chess game. It's a
Huge.
chess game, right? It's a chess game first,
Yeah.
physical second.
Yeah.
So it's a question of how you have an angry beast coming at you. What are you going to do? You want to turn into a slugfest against the flipping nut?
Depends.
Yeah, exactly. It's a chess game.
Yeah, it's a chess match. Yeah.
Right. So no, I mean, it's a crapshoot as to what you get, but I think that Arnie was just absolutely legendary. And what he did for not just for Kitchener Waterloo, but like for boxing as a whole in Canada is astronomical. Like, look at the champions that came out of that gym. Like,
yeah, I know.
2 families full of champions.
I know.
Like,
so many.
You guys have like.
Hold on a sec. There's something beeping here.
Okay.
MJ, come down here. I don't know how to use. I don't even know how to use this. I don't even know how to use the stove, right? But you got it beeping, girl. What's that? Oh yeah, you got to turn it off. Yeah, good thing I get dinner made. Thank you. So yeah, we were talking about and then you know what's weird about coaching too, like like when you hear about great coaches and stuff, to my mind, people like Ray Arcel, who coached like Duran and stuff. Maybe Angelo Dundee, who had Sugar Ray and Muhammad Ali and 20 other world champions. But a lot of the great people that go down as being the great trainers, they never started the actual fighter. You know what I'm saying? From day one. Can you think of someone like that, right? Like, I mean, there isn't too many.
That's the thing, and Arnie was one of them.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Arnie started them all and got them. I know Lennox went with Adrian to the rescue there, and
there's a long story with that. Arnie lost his gym, so he started and you have to. I still can't wrap my head around this.
Yeah,
his gym. He lives in Kitchener. The gym was in Kitchener, and he'd throw all the guys into a van and drive them down to Adrian's gym to train out of Adrian's gym.
Wow.
Adrian's gym was over an hour away in Toronto.
Yeah.
And he did this every day.
Wow.
He was.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well.
And that's how Adrian. Also Adrian was, I think, the national team coach and whatnot.
Yeah, I'm not sure if he was. Like, I mean, he's from Romania, so he had a lot of experience, I think, but I don't think he was a national coach at the time. He might have. There was a lot of controversy in the 88 games too, because Taylor Gordon and the guy from Ray
Napper.
I think they were coaches. They were supposed to be our 2 coaches, right? So there was a lot of infighting because they said, no, Adrian, you can't go in the corner. Only the head coaches can go, right? So then Lennox and Egerton says, oh, I guess we're going home then.
Exactly.
So it changed who went in the corner, right?
Adrian told me about some of the wars that he had and the politics.
Oh, too much.
At the end of the day, I'm surprised. I'm surprised that the athletes did as well as he did. Even Lennox was on the national team for 5 years. And Adrian told me a story about when once they tried to screw over Lennox. The Nationals was in Ottawa, and they're trying to say, "Oh yeah, Lennox doesn't have to be here. He's good because he's already on the national team." Next thing you know, Adrian gets there, and well, if Lennox is scheduled to fight tomorrow,
they screwed him.
Really? So Adrian calls Lennox, says, "Get your ass down here." Yeah. Lennox sleeps in his bed, in his room.
Yeah.
Next morning, he just sort of shows up, weighing the whole 9 yards. Okay. And you thought everyone just slack jump. I'm just like, this infighting, this nonsense.
Yeah.
And you guys were like, we haven't won a medal in the Olympics since '96.
Yeah.
So in the 80s was the glory years. You guys
Yeah,
were, I don't know how many medals you guys got in
84 and 88, yeah.
right? There's still infighting going on, but like nothing like how
Yeah.
can you guys succeed when we can't succeed? Like what's missing in the equation today?
Yeah, it must have been like, I mean, I'm sure it's all the same infighting is today that there was back then, if not worse, because of all this these chat rooms everyone's on and all this social media. Like you can't get away from it. It's around you 24/7, man. Like I work with kids, at-risk youth in Vancouver. I'm a high school teacher in Vancouver, and I work with a
call you Gabe Carter.
What's up?
That's why I call you Gabe Carter. You're Gabe Carter.
Oh yeah. Carter, yeah.
Welcome back, Carter.
There you go. Now I hear it. Now I got it. It went over my head a little bit, but anyway, yeah, like there's no end to it because they can get bullied 24/7, man. And then a lot of these kids, like, unfortunately, they don't have some of the boxing skills that you should have and be able to ignore it, right? And react to everything, right? And it's a tough go when you don't have the skills to be able to deal with it, right?
By all means, it's a tough go, to say the least. Yeah. How did you get into your pro career?
Well, after that 91, I couldn't do amateur boxing anymore. So then I was pretty much done my university by that time. And I started just doing local cards in Vancouver here. And then eventually, well, I got lucky because there was in Washington State, they started doing these Aboriginal casinos or native casinos.
Oh, yeah.
So there was one called the Lucky Eagle Casino, and it was remote. It was like in a place called Rochester, Washington, out of nowhere, but they started doing these fight cards. And the guy that was doing the fight cards that they hired to do them was a guy by the name of Benny Giorgino. Okay. And Benny Giorgino was a real good boxing person. He was from California, and he managed a guy named Little Red Lopez, Danny Little Red Lopez, and he managed a bunch of other guys. And I mean, Benny's so well known in boxing, and a lot of people know. You can Google him after he's unfortunately passed away. He was already old at that time. He was probably in his 70s or 80s. So he died in his early 90s, I think. But so, I mean, when I was down in Vegas training and stuff, like I was with Benny, and then I remember I'll never forget this. We were at Caesar's Palace, and then you hear, Benny! And who is it? The guy with the big hair walking over there, Don King. Hey, Benny! And they're hugging and everything. And so we had lunch with the Don King, man. And Benny knows everybody in boxing. And so Benny got me the right people, put the right guys in front of me. He got me some guys that were pretty, high ranked guys at one time. But Benny knew that there was flaws that could be infiltrated. And fought some guys that were, some pretty good high names. And Benny got me those fights, got me ranked in the WBC, and then this IBO world title shot came up. So it all went by so fast, man. Like it's like a blur. Everything goes. But that's how pro boxing started. And I moved to Las Vegas. I boxed in sort of out of Vancouver until 1990, about the end of 1996, and I think it was January or December either December 96 or January 97, I moved to Las Vegas. So then because by that time I had a manager by the name of Jerry Gilroy from Edmonton, and he was paying all the expenses. So I said, okay, I'll take school because I had a job, and I took a leave, went down to Vegas, got some matches down there and stuff. And I was training at the top ranked gym. I was training at this place called the Nevada Partners, where Floyd Mayweather started training in 97 because he just got out of the 96 Olympics. And that was the gym he was training at with his father and his uncle Roger. Sparred lots with Roger, quite a few rounds with Roger, sparred a number of rounds with Floyd himself too at this Nevada Partners. And I don't know, it was living sort of the dream, but in retrospect, it was the wrong way to do it because I was sparring with a lot of world title contenders and everything. So when the time came to make matches, things just didn't sort of work out because they said, well, no, you don't want to fight that guy because that guy's ready to go because we just saw him in the gym last week.
Wow, that's right. Yeah.
So it would have been better for me, I believe, to just go for 2 or 3 week periods, maybe.
Yep.
If I were to do it again to Vegas or to LA or to work. Because I went to LA for a while as well, actually. I worked out at a place called the LA Boxing, which was part owned by Ken Norton, believe it or not. Yeah. So I was trained with a guy by the name of Bill Slayton, Bill Slayton was one of Ken Norton's trainers actually as well. And I trained with him, I think, for 2 matches. And then I went over to Vegas and I was training with a guy named Jerome Coffey, who also trained Scotty Olson.
I know Jerome well.
Yeah, Jerome, he was a good fighter back in the day, but it wasn't really a fit for me, to tell you the truth, though.
No?
Not really. Like, I mean, you got to mesh with training. I didn't totally mesh with Jerome, and it just is what it is, man. And yeah, I went on and did what I could. And
when did you? What was your signal that, you know what, I've had enough?
Well, it was really. See, I boxed a guy named Tony Badia.
Twice.
Twice in '96, and then I think I boxed him again in '98, maybe, or '98 or '99. It was probably '99 actually, because that's when I moved out of Vegas.
Okay.
'99. So after the first fight with Badia, I beat him. He was quitting, and then he found a way to get out with a head. Like he said, I headbutted him, but he was cut before I was cut as well, and whatever. By the 11th round, I was coming on. He just quit, and so I won. But they went to a decision because he cried and said that he got hit. Blah blah blah. So they went to the scorecards, and I won a decision. And then I had a couple more fights. He had a couple more fights, and he actually beat Greg Johnson too, I think.
Really?
One of his fights, yeah. I'm pretty sure he did, yeah. And as a pro. Yeah. See, that's what's weird about Greg. He didn't have a great record, but that guy could box. He was so fast and hit so hard. You know what I'm saying? Like it's kind of a matrix in a way, right? But yeah, I'm pretty sure he beat Greg. And then Badia and I rematched, and what happened in that match was, I just wasn't sharp. It wasn't my day. It wasn't my day that day. And it was kind of a weird thing too, that like in the second or third round, I went down on my ankle kind of weird. And then I had a compound fracture. My tibia popped out of my leg basically. But
wow.
The thing is, the boxing boot kept it all together, right? And I think I went to the 6th round, if I'm not mistaken. You'd know in the record, whatever the record's there, like 6th round or something. So I kept fighting on. I did what I could, but just wasn't my day. And so I took my boot off, and it was soaking in blood. And
a compound fracture. And I broke my hand in a fight. My right hand, actually, it was my first 6th rounder against Paul Mabongo.
Yeah.
Cracked him with a right hand.
Yeah.
And then felt sort of funny. Cracked him again.
Yeah.
And it's broken. I finished the fight with the left hand.
Yeah.
But my hand is different than my feet.
Yeah, I know.
That
I mean, if you watch the video too, like you'll see that I'm kind of limping around, and most of my weight, because it was my right ankle, so most of my weight's in my front foot. So I'm leaning forward, and we banged heads so many times. I mean, again, not to take anything away from Jerome, because this happened in the 2nd round, right, when I broke my ankle. And I went back, I said, fuck, my ankle's killing me. He goes, fuck your leg, you got to get out there and fight. That's what I can vaguely remember. And then we were banging heads so much. Like I was cut for over, I think, 60 stitches by the end of that fight. And if it was before the 4th round, it would have just been a no contest.
Yeah.
So someone like Angelo Dundee would have called the referee over because he knows my ankle's done.
Yeah.
Hey, I don't know if he can continue. Look how big that cut is. Open it up some more. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And that was your first loss.
That was my first loss. And yeah, and I sort of knew it was over then because, yeah, I moved back to Vancouver, and then I did have one more. Because I wanted to go out with a win, right? So I fought the guy by the name of Eric Holland. And Eric Holland, even though he didn't have a great record, he was a pretty good fighter because he beat some good fighters. And he was a good journeyman, you know. And I beat him, I think, in an 8 or a 10 round decision. So then I called it quits. That was it. I'm done. But what was crazy about it, then I couldn't believe how many calls I was getting, and some big money fight calls, like, 6-figure fights.
That's exactly.
Because I was formerly world ranked, and I had the IBO title at one time, so they could say promote that and stuff. But people would know that you're damaged goods. And one of the big calls I got was from HBO. They wanted me to fight Jermaine Taylor, and they offered me good money. And I turned that one down because I says to myself, well, Jermaine Taylor's a vicious puncher, and I don't want to have it. I want to be able to speak after I'm done. So, I wasn't training either. And it was not that short of, like, I think they were going to give me 5 weeks or something to train for. So I contemplated a bit, but I said I turned it down. And then I don't know, maybe 6 months after that or 4 months after that, I got a call from Denmark for 7. They needed a replacement in 7 days to fight a guy named Mikkel Kessler. And I Googled him, and I didn't Google him at that time. Or I might have, because that was like 2001. I don't know if Google was around, but I looked him up on the internet somehow. And he didn't look that vicious or that bad. And I said,
Kessler wasn't vicious?
Well, I didn't think so from when I Googled him and stuff like that. But he turned out to be, like, once I got in the ring with him, because it was 2-weight classifier too, right? Because I was a junior middleweight. He's a super middleweight, but
yeah.
Whatever. So I gave my buddy Russ Amber a call and said, hey, Russ, you want to go back to Denmark? Because I fought at a tournament there in Copenhagen, the Copenhagen Cup in 1986 or 87 with Russ, and Russ was the head coach, right? So that's when Russ and I first met. And Russ realized that I was fluent in Spanish, and he wanted to learn Spanish, so I was kind of his Spanish instructor. And we became really good friends, Russ, and we're great friends to this day. And so I said, hey, Russ, you remember going to Tivoli Gardens, and you remember going over, like, going to Denmark when we were in Denmark there? And because I got cut under the eyes, so he went to the hospital with me. You remember going to the hospital? Yeah, those are great days. And, so whatever, 15 years later, we're back in Denmark fighting Mikkel Kessler. So anyway, Russ is a good man, and it was good. It was, I tried what I could do, but I couldn't hurt the guy. He was had some shots. So
Kessler was a bad man.
Yeah, he was.
He's a bad man.
Yeah, he was. He was one of the better super middleweights. He wasn't too far off from Andre Ward, really.
No, he wasn't.
Very close. Yeah.
No, he wasn't.
Yeah.
But
so I couldn't complain, and I knew after that it was done. And I don't want to get punched out. I don't need it. And went back to work teaching, and that's something I love as well. And I think that's one of the big things with a lot of boxers that keep coming back. They got to find something else they love, something else they can do to stimulate the brain, right? And teaching did that for me, and still does it for me. And I love going to work in the morning and having different things to do and people to see and probation officers to talk to, social workers to work with, and it becomes interesting, right? It's an interesting thing for me, and
rewarding is what it is.
Yeah, I think that's the bottom line. At the end of the day, we're got a lot of kids that we're trying to help out, and if those supports weren't there, and who knows, right? I don't know how many kids I've given grades to that kind of hey, let's figure it out together, and who's doing most of the work? Manny's doing most of the work, but whatever, he shows up or she shows up and they get through, right? Because at the end of the day, it's not just your marks that are going to get you through in life. It's a lot coming from the heart and being able to have a work ethic and so many other things other than just doing arithmetic or
Of course,
calculus or whatever, right?
there's a lot. There's a lot of variables to that equation.
Many, multiple,
Right.
and you're not going to hold a kid back by not giving them their grade 11 math, so they can't graduate and move on to doing something else that they might do well at, right? Why stumble them there and keep them at that impasse?
Good for you. That's a noble gesture. That's a noble profession. Let alone.
I'm happy. I mean,
Good for you.
like I said, I don't have to yeah. I'm glad I chose the profession I chose. I was going to go into policing, and policing is not too bad, but this is the better end of it because I'm not dealing with the scum all the time. I'm dealing with young kids that just had a hard done by, or
Yeah. Okay.
not a lot here. Like most of these kids I'm working with, they're in youth, they're in foster care. They're wards of the ministry because they unfortunately were not born with a mother and a father like I was that cared and loved me. You know what I'm saying? If you have that one person in your life that unconditionally loves you,
Yeah.
it's amazing. And you can get by so many things. If you don't have that, imagine that. Imagine not knowing deep down you don't have, because foster care, sure, these people are taking care of the kids, but they're getting paid to do it, man.
Yep.
And when the going gets tough, like, I don't know, I've screwed up a lot when I was growing up, but my mom, okay, I got disciplined, but I still knew she loved me.
Yeah.
And if you don't have that, fuck, it's hard to get by life, man.
You compared police work to a teacher. I see them as two opposite ends of the spectrum.
They sort of are.
They go off and they punish.
Yeah.
They arrest.
Yeah.
You actually try to mend.
Yeah.
And build. I don't see
it's changing though. The policing is changing in a way because, like, I work very closely with the police liaison officers in Vancouver, which most high schools have one police liaison officer, and realistically, they're trying to do more prevention than anything, and try to instead of just locking them up, they're going away from just putting youth in custody. They'd rather have alternative measures out in the community, which works for some but doesn't work for others. Sometimes you have, but very few youth are being incarcerated nowadays. And I think that's a good thing, because what good does that do? It just makes you a better criminal because you're there with everybody else.
It's called the school of hard knocks for a reason.
Yeah.
Manny, I gotta let you go. This was a great interview. Yeah. Most importantly, I want to thank you.
Well, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. Nice meeting you, Graham.
I really wanted to showcase you and let mankind remember what Manny Sobral did for Canada. So,
I appreciate it.
Thanks, my man.
Thanks, buddy.
Cheers.
You do this every day?
We do this 5 days a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
At 8:30.
At 8:30.
And where do you see it? Live somewhere?
You can stream this live. We'll stream live.
So I can just go Google your name and it will come up?
The show is The Scoop. On the channel is Talking Fights.
The Scoop. So it's online though. It's streaming online.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna Google it.
Sure.
Thanks, buddy.
All right.
Check out 2 world champs as well. Like
I got you.
I told you about it. Yeah.
I got you. I'm watching you tomorrow.
Awesome.
You got my friend Howard on.
We had Howard on last week, but then it didn't work out so well. So we're gonna have Howard on next Thursday. But then we splice it up and then do it on. It's not live, right?
Yeah. We had Howard on 2 days ago.
Yeah, he was saying that. He was telling us.
Yeah.
He's a good man, Howard.
He's a great man. Yes, he is.
That was Howard should have got a medal too, because he beat that guy from Sweden, a guy named Lars Menberg. He beat him, but they just didn't give him the decision. He lost the 4-1, eh?
But then look, I wanted to talk more about Jimmy Pegadam. But
yeah, and Jimmy Pagenham really got ripped off, man, because he knocked that guy down 3 times, but the referee didn't see it. That's the only time in Olympic history that it's ever happened.
Exactly. No, that was an iconic year. But
so many things happening, eh?
Manny, I want to bring you back sometime.
Thanks, Ray. It's always good talking to you. It's always great talking boxing with boxing people, my friend.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Have a good night, man.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Have a good one. Bye.
Bye now.
Yeah, I don't know what's up with my mic. I don't think my mic's working.
It's working now.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Right on. That was an awesome interview.
Yeah, that was great. He's a special guy. Like he's so easy to talk to, and there's no machismo and there's no ego. Like you see that's just the way he's like. He's achieved so much, like almost to celebrity status, and yet look how down to earth he is.
Yeah, very humble man, and giving back to the community.
Exceptional.
Helping out all those kids out there. And I was going to ask him, but I was having trouble with my mic. I was going to ask him whether the kids he teaches knows about his history.
You heard me ask him. He said yes. I'm bringing him back.
Yeah, that's cool.
And we'll ask him.
That's awesome. No, he's doing well for the community, and I really appreciated hearing about his history and where he's coming from, and just what he's giving back for. Why he's giving that back. It's he's learned so much. He's giving that knowledge back.
Precisely. We didn't even touch on the fact that he's actually still coaching. So.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Exactly. Yeah, he's still coaching. So
I got the impression he was out of the ring and focused on teaching, like classroom teaching.
No,
I didn't realize he was.
No, he's still
that's
coaching.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, then it gives him reason to come back on the show and bring us up to date as to his coaching and what he's doing in the ring.
There you go. There you go. So, with that, if you like this episode, please smash that like button and subscribe. It's your boy Bola, and that's the scoop.